Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Selden, and this is Independent School Leaders Network. Just to be very clear, even though it's sponsored by the Montessori Foundation, and even though we call it the Independent School Leaders, we believe that independent schools can be public, they can be private, they can be for-profit, they can be nonprofit, they can be American, they can be international. We don't care where you are. If you think independently, you belong here. And we also really celebrate the young child and the older child. And the bottom line is we are here for everybody. So as we get started, this is our weekly webcast. You have signed up, if you're here, you have signed up for the series. And you don't need to sign up for each week. This is not a webinar. This is a conversation, and you are welcome to unmute and ask questions. You can put it in the chat. With me is my co-host, Dr. Lindsay Pollock, the talented provost of Sarasota University, the world's first accredited Montessori university,
Thank
offering
you,
bachelor's,
Tim.
master's, and doctorates.
So happy to be here with you today.
And we have three organizations with us today, right, Lindsay?
That's correct. We do.
We have Reflection Sciences, which is the publisher, among other things, of MEFS, Minnesota Executive Function Skills, a wonderful, very valuable tool that every one of us should be using with our children, really at almost any age. We have Dr. Nikki Magnuson, who is with us from Chancy and Bruce, which is a group you may not know, but you ought to know because they're doing some very interesting things that I don't know too many people that have anything similar. You might be using, I don't know, one of the other assessments that are out there, but most of those are looking at either reading or whatever. Nikki will explain what she does, but I think that it is a very interesting tool for a lot of schools that is really fits in well. And then we have a couple of representatives from the National Center in the Montessori, excuse me, National Center for Montessori in the Public Sector. We have Katie and Katie. And we're going to just get this show on the road. And again, please ask questions. Lindsay, you organized today's event, I believe. Who starts?
Um, Gosh, maybe our presenters could help me out. Who decided to go first?
I would just suggest that DERS come after MEFS because I think DERS will make more sense once we've heard about executive function.
Okay, so
Yeah,
does that work?
it
Yeah,
works.
we have no problem going first. We're happy
Thanks,
to get things
Josh.
started.
Appreciate that.
So let me go ahead and share. We have a slide deck, and Cindy's going to get started. But Cindy, if you don't mind, I'll control it, and you just tell me when you're ready to hit next slide if needed.
Perfect.
Katie, I'm giving you permission to do your thing. There we go.
All right. Does everyone see? Whoop. There we go. Everyone can see that slide deck?
We can see it. Get into presenter mode, Josh. We can see the preview slides. There you go.
There we go. Let's do it. All right. So thank you for having us. We really appreciate the invitation and introduction. So my name is Josh Herod. Cindy Rodriguez is also with us today, and we come from Reflection Sciences. So we are the executive function company, and we are known for our executive function assessment, which, as you referred to as the Minnesota Executive Function Scale, the MEFS. That is part of our EFGO platform. And sometimes there's confusion behind that, but it's pretty simple. So EFGO is our platform where you use the assessment, you see the data, the reporting, and then you access all of our other products, including digital activities that are based on giving more repetitions for executive function skills. Also, our play-based activities that are recommended based on children's scores. Teachers are able to track progress over time and use it, whether you're in an academic calendar or in some other type of year-round setting. That EFGO platform really enables teachers and administrative staff to see where their children are with executive function development and growth over time. So with that, I will give the reins to Cindy.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Cindy Rodriguez, and Montessori has been a very important part of my journey as an educator. I work in early childhood education for nearly 20 years, with more than 13 of those years in a Montessori environment. I am AMS Montessori trained, and I've had the opportunity to serve as a Montessori guide in different communities of the DMV area and New York. My home, as I always call it, is Latin American Montessori Bilingual in DC. So when I first began learning more deeply about executive function through my work with reflection sciences, I remember having this moment of recognition, and I thought, wait, we do this in Montessori every single day. And we may not always use the words working memory, inhibitory control, or cognitive flexibility in the environment, but when you really look at what children are doing throughout their work cycle, they are constantly practicing these skills, okay? So I want to move to my first picture. Take something as simple as a practical life activity. Before this child can complete the work independently, she has to remember the sequence, right? The one that we show as a guide, how to carry the material, where to begin, how to pour, how to, what comes next, and how to complete and return the work back to the shelf. She is holding information in mind while she's using it. And that's right there. It's what we call working memory. And what I love about Montessori is that we're not sitting down and saying, okay, kids, let's sit down. Today we're going to learn or practice working memory. No, the child is developing it naturally through the purposeful work that we put out there for them. Now we're going to look at the Montessori classroom as a whole. There are so many things happening at the same time. Children are moving, other materials are available on the shelf. Someone may be working right beside you, right? And yet the child has to manage their attention, control the environment or the movement around him, some impulses that may come in, respect somebody else's work, and persist with what they have chosen. And that's inhibitory control. The prepared environment gives children freedom, but it's freedom within limits. And that creates so many natural opportunities for practice that self-control or self-regulation. And then finally, we have moments like this, what you see on that third picture. One of the beautiful things about Montessori materials is the control of error, right? One of the things that I love to talk about with parents is that if something doesn't fit or doesn't work the way the child is expecting to, the material will often give that feedback without us immediately stepping in and saying, oh, that's wrong. So what does the child do? They stop, they notice, they adjust, and then they try again or try another way. And that's cognitive flexibility. And that process of trying to adjust and problem solve is incredibly important because we are allowing the child to develop flexibility to respond when something doesn't go according to plan. And when we pull all this together, this is where I see such a natural connection between Montessori and executive function. Think about the things that we intentionally build into our environment, like choice, independence, concentration, repetition, and problem solving. These aren't separate from executive function. They create opportunities for children to practice executive function every single day. And I think independence is especially important in why? In Montessori, we talk about independence all the time, but independence doesn't simply mean I can do it by myself. For a child to truly become an independent learner, they also have to learn to manage their attention, remember what they need to do, control their action, persist throughout difficulties, and change strategies when something is not working. And those are executive function skills. My work with reflection sciences have given me another lens, and it's like we say, it's like I'm gonna say to my children, okay, let's put those executive function glasses and that helps me understand what I already been observing in my Montessori classroom for years. And today, part of my role is supporting educators understand executive function using what Josh is going to talk about, which is the MEFS and our platform. And interpreting that data might tell us about the child that we are serving, right? And for me, that important part isn't simply having a score, it's what we do with that information. So instead of looking at a child and thinking, why won't this child follow the directions I'm giving, or why can they sit still? Executive function give us an opportunity to ask a different question as a guide. What skills might this child be developing? And then how can I adjust the environment or my support to give that child the opportunity to practice that skill? And that's really the connection I want to leave with you guys. Montessori taught me personally to observe the child, and executive function has given me another lens for understanding what I already observe. And when we bring those two perspectives together, we can move from simply reacting to a child's behavior to understanding the skills underneath that behavior and intentionally creating opportunities for those skills to be able to grow. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Josh, who is going to go in depth into the MEFS.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Cindy. So when we were asked to speak today, we thought, there's a lot of information that we can include. We have a long-standing history working specifically with Montessori's. But I thought it was best to start with Cindy because she has that real world experience. I have an early childhood degree and background, but I've spent a lot of time also in the research lab using the MEFS. I've had my own company for autism services, behavioral therapy, and autism consulting. And so, while I understand Montessori and I've had a lot of experience with it, and I know the people, Katie and Katie at NCMPS, I think now for over a decade. I sound old when I say that. But we've been partners in this space for a long time. But nothing compares to real world experience like what Cindy has and that understanding of what Montessori is and how it integrates with executive function. So, with the last few minutes that we have today, I'm going to talk just a little more about EF, who we are, why we work with Montessori's, and why you should care about where your children are at with these skills. And so Cindy talked about executive function in three ways. So we have three subcomponents. It's that working memory, inhibitory control, and cognitive flexibility. And those are great terms. It's what we use in the textbooks. It's what we use on our reporting when you see where the kids scoring are based on their age and gender. But another way to think about those skills are attention, memory, and impulse control, or sometimes people call it self-regulation. And why I like this slide is because of these three pictures. As children, especially in a Montessori, how do we expect to learn and grow and build any skills without the ability to attend, without memory being improved over time, and of course, self-regulation, positive behaviors, reducing challenging behaviors, right? And so when we focus on these skills, these executive function skills, things like circle time, and the learning environment, specifically in the Montessori space, right? We provide better opportunities for learning. So it's important to focus on these executive function skills early on, so that we have better opportunities to learn, as you see at the bottom, regulate emotion and our interactions with other children, with adults, with family members, and so forth. So at Reflection Sciences, we think of our framework in three different ways. First, we help our groups understand. So that might be through some training, some background on executive function, some background on our assessment, and how we improve executive function, what that looks like. And it's also important to reflect as teachers or administrative staff on your own executive function. Then we have the measure, which is using the assessment, right? And then we have improve. And Cindy mentioned that. And back when we started this, Reflection sciences started in 2014, technically. We were really good at measuring and getting those numbers to you and making sense of it. But we didn't yet have time to think about the what then or why. And now we have that. And that's part of the EFGO platform. So it's the play-based activities. It's the platform that tracks growth over time, more than just one academic year. So if we're getting ready for kindergarten, that history, that data can go with the child, and we can think of the child being measured and improve over time throughout development, which is really important. Just wanted to give you guys, we keep talking about the Minnesota Executive Function Scale. I wanted to give you a quick idea of what it looks like. So it's a digital assessment. It takes 2 to 6 minutes per child. They, based on age, start at 1 of 5 levels, and then the assessment really takes over. So we do have teachers sit with the children to make sure they're engaged. It often makes children want to ask questions, so the teacher's there to redirect neutrally and make sure they get from start to finish. But the assessment is pretty hands-free for teachers these days. So we have built-in audio. It reads the script at the top, and then we give children challenges and ask them to sort cards. And depending on how they do, if they do well, they go up a level. It becomes more challenging. If they struggle with that first level, they go down a level without really noticing. It becomes easier. And the idea is we create a baseline, a ceiling, and then we're done. We get in, we get out. So what used to take hours, maybe were subjective observations. You might get different opinions from different people. In a few minutes, I can see where a child's executive function is at with an accurate score based on norms that use over 100,000 children in the US, spanning ages 2 to 18. I get meaningful subcomponent scores. So a child that's at the national average of 50, there's 2 children, they both score a 50. Well, on paper, it may look the same, but there's probably 2 different stories there. One child might be stronger in working memory than inhibitory control. And I, as a teacher, want to know that so I can help them have more opportunity to work on those skills. Are we doing okay on time? I've got about 2 to 3 more minutes here. Is that okay?
We may run over a little bit this time. It's okay. Finish
Okay.
up, Josh.
All right. I just wanted to make sure. So another way to look at executive function, I mentioned the 3 subcomponents. Think of it as an air traffic control tower. So when you're using your executive function, you're coordinating a lot of things in front of you, right? You need to plan, focus your attention, remember instructions, that's that working memory, and you're multitasking. And so your executive function is always working if you think about it. I ask families and new teachers, tell me a moment in a child's day in Montessori that they're not using executive function. And the room stays quiet. Sometimes someone tries to offer something, they're brave, but I hate to tell them, sorry, the answer is wrong. The only time we're not using executive function is when we're passed out unconscious during nap time, but we use executive function to get there, right? And then the teachers use lots of executive function to help get the classroom to that activity and expected outcome.
Okay.
Another way we like to look at it, all of this information, by the way, is in an amazing professional development course that is provided for free by NCMPS. I'll let Katie Brown or Katie Grabowski talk about that. We worked in partnership with them to do that. It's an awesome online asynchronous course. It goes into these concepts in depth. You can register for it for free and have access to that information. There's awesome videos, great links, even academic publications built into the course itself. And Cindy has worked with NCMPS to keep those links live and make sure it's accurate, as Cindy is in charge of all of our professional development content as well. So the tree is another way to look at executive function. EF skills are the root of everything else we do, meaning academic success, social interactions, social emotional development. And as we know, executive function is a better predictor of later outcomes than IQ. Remember, IQ is static. Executive function has plasticity, so it's something we can improve upon at all times. And we have to remember that children and adults alike we run into situations, whether it's trauma or stress, maybe it's a move, maybe it's being bullied. And those things can alter our EF development and growth. And so, as educators, we can assess, hey, something's going on. We use the assessment, we see the score has stagnated or dropped. Let's talk about it as a group. And what do we do? What can we do to get this back on track and get that accelerated growth that we expect? That's all we have for today. I know there's two other amazing groups that I do not want to steal time from. So I really appreciate you having
Thank you,
us.
Josh. Yeah.
We can always go longer, but if you have any questions, you can reach us on our website. There's a chat function in the bottom right, or support@reflectionsciences.com, which is a mouthful. I apologize, but you'll get directly to Cindy and I very quickly.
Well, hopefully we'll have time for people to ask questions at any point. Nikki,
Yep, we'll stay on.
Nikki, why don't you go next and tell us about what Chancy and Bruce does?
Sure, I will. Let me share my screen. Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. I'm sure everyone's in the hustle and bustle of first week, whether you're preparing or you're started. We know that your time is precious. So I think on behalf of all of us, we thank you guys for joining. My name is Nikki Magnuson, and I am the current executive director at Chancy and Bruce. I'll give you a quick background on Chancy and Bruce. Dr. Bonnie Bruce and Dr. Barb Chancy both have their backgrounds in early ed with an emphasis in special education. And this is always a fun fact I like to share. Dr. Bonnie Bruce was on Mr. Rogers' board to help develop his show. So if that gives you a little bit of background, she's in her late 80s now, but she really has always had a heart for age appropriate, developmentally appropriate teachings programs for children. So myself, I've been in education 28 years. I've worked in both public, private sector, and we use Chancy and Bruce at our school. So this is our 26th year as a company, and we do one thing and one thing really well, and that's get kids ready for kindergarten based on these developmental pathways. And what Dr. Bonnie Bruce and Barb Chancy came to find 46 years ago when they both enrolled their kids in kindergarten, she said, we looked at each other and we said, half these kids don't belong in kindergarten, because we know age is just a number. So just because they're 5 and they're ready for kindergarten does not mean that they're ready for kindergarten. Like I know a lot of 18-year-olds or even older than that are adults, but we know they don't have the skills and the developmental appropriateness for that age. And so what they did is they created a 20 to 40-minute assessment. It's one-on-one, and it covers these 10 pathways. And I'll just go through them very quickly. I'm sure you guys are familiar with these pathways. You might call them something different. So we look at, first and foremost, social emotional development. I've met with a couple of the people from MEFS. I think it's amazing. This is the fact that they're doing executive functioning at such a young age, I think is such an important factor to see and support, and so well aligned with the Montessori way, as Tim calls it. So we look at social emotional first, and that goes through a parent and teacher questionnaire. So we look at 18 factors for social emotional development. We look at the motor skills, fine motor, gross motor. And we all know that a lot of parents want to go right to the academics. Can they read? Can they write? Well, what we want to look at is, can they hold a pencil? Can they button their shirt? Can they zip up their pants? Can they open their string cheese? Gross motor, can they sit up straight? Can they play on the recess without getting hurt? We look at the visual skills. We look at visual discrimination and visual memory. Can they discriminate visually what they see? Can they tell the difference between a square and a rectangle? Because if they can't tell the difference between a square and a rectangle, they're probably not going to tell the difference between an I and a J or a B and a D. And then visual memory, are they able to see something and memorize it? Because as they develop their literacy, that's very important. Then we look at the auditory skills, auditory memory. Can they hear and memorize what they're taking in? And auditory discrimination, can they discriminate those sounds between cat and can? Do they see those are the same? Auditory memory ties in really well with also receptive language, which is a 2-language expressive and receptive. I share this story often. I think whether you have a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old at times, you might give them a 3-step instruction like, hey, we're going to the beach. Go upstairs and grab a towel, put on your bathing suit, and meet me at the car. 3 steps, sometimes 4. And you go up 15 minutes later, they're either on their phone or they're playing Legos, depending on their age. And you're like, hey, I just asked you to do 3 simple things and you're still unable to to do that? Well, we know in kindergarten and beyond, they're given 3 and 2-step instructions all day long. So we look at that auditory, receptive language, taking in the language, as well as auditory discrimination. Are they taking that information in? And then lastly, we look at comprehension. So our test is done. We train, we have over 70 screeners that work for us that we go out to schools in California, but outside of California. And we do have some schools that states that we have trainers in, but we come to your school, we train you, or we train you remotely. It's about a 3-hour training. From there, you're able to administer the test. We ask you to do 3 sample tests before we approve you. So once the training is done, you do 3 sample tests. We look at your scoring, make sure everything is on point. We send you a certificate. Ta-da, you become a Chancy and Bruce certified screener. From there, you are able to administer that 20 to 40-minute assessment with each child. The assessment is live. So it starts from 2.5 and goes to 6.5. So you could have a 4-year-old that goes developmentally all the way down to 2.5, or you can have a 4-year-old that goes all the way to 6.5. But our goal is just to see if their age and their developmental abilities match. So does their chronological and developmental age match? Because that's something we're seeing a big gap in. And as parents, you know, your 1-year-old and your 2-year-old are very different developmentally, which is why that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year gap can significantly be a disadvantage for students entering kindergarten. So here are the pathways. I thought I would open it up if you guys want me to show you some of the questions. I apologize, for some reason my screen is a little blurry, but let me move down to a visual discrimination question so you guys can see a question. This is a prompt for a 4.5-year-old, and we show them these pictures and we say, and this is an actual question from the assessment. So right here, if you look at prompt 1, the task is selecting 2 identical pictures from 4 choices. This is prompt 1, this is prompt 2, and this is the procedure. You tell the child, I want you to look at these pictures, point to the 2 that are just alike. And the child is supposed to be able to identify how 2 of these girls have ponytails. And so the assessment, if the child gets it correct, you keep moving up as an older age. If they miss the question, then you go backwards. And then from there, these are the results that a parent in a school gets. We've worked with several Montessori schools in the last, I want to say 6 months, Tim, about that long. I think we've been working with some of our Montessori schools. This has been amazing for the administrators and the teachers to have with them when they're sitting at conferences to kind of explain if a child has gaps, even identify some possible special needs in specific areas. But you can see the child's age here. This child is 4 years, 6 months. We believe 6 months above and 6 months below would be considered chronologically appropriate. So if you're 4 years, you can go up to 4.5 or drop down to 3.5. And then see how each pathway now right here, all the pathways are determined. So these are the results you would get for a child based on this is a demo student. So they're fine motor, they're 5 years, they're age appropriate, but if you scroll down to auditory memory, they're a little advanced, so they're strong. I actually had a mom last summer email me, her son was graduating from USC in music, and she said he took this test over 20 years ago, and they had found through this assessment at a young age he has strong auditory skills, so he graduated from USC for music. And she called us to thank us. I mean, I was like, I haven't been around that long, but anyway, so you're able to pick up some of the strengths. But then if you scroll down to comprehension, you can see he's a little bit, he's emerging in that. He's 4 years, 4 months. And then here's some of the social emotional that we pick up on, whether it's a combination of 3 data points, the parent, the teacher, and the screener. We also can pick up on speech. So here the screener observed that the child was struggling with the R sound. And a comment that the screener added that during the visual memory and comprehension portion of the assessment, Sam struggled with focusing and needed additional redirection. That's very helpful as an administrator, because what you're able to share with the parents is, we all know 4 and 5 and even 6-year-olds and 3-year-olds all need redirection, but do they need 4 redirections for an assessment, or do they need 40? And we have had students that almost every 20 to 30 seconds, you need to redirect that child. And then these are the observations that the screener sees during the assessment. So, and we do say during the assessment, because we do have students that during the assessment, they might be really wiggly, but during the assessment, they did awesome because it's one-on-one and combined, or vice versa. You have a child that's very maybe less wiggly, but they're nervous during that one-on-one assessment. So we always say during the screening. And then we do the recommendations. This is where we recommend if the child needs that gift of time, which is what we call TK or pre-K, do they need that additional year to help strengthen those pathways? And then some comments of what the screener has seen. These are observations all combined in one final comments. And then this is my favorite part we just added. This is a chart. Everybody loves visuals to see where the child is at. And then here are the prescriptions. So we have over, I think we're close to 500,000 prescriptions depending on where the child is. So for this child specifically, if you scroll back up for fine motor, this child was 4 years, 6 months, and fine motor, he's 5 years. So the prescription is specifically for a 4.5-month-old who's scoring 5 years old in fine motor, for a 4.5-month-old who's scoring 4 years, 10 months in visual discrimination by the month. So based on how the child scored, we have suggestions on what the parent or teacher could do with the child on each of those pathways, because this is something we've added. The assessments stayed the same, 40 years plus. It's been the same tried and true longitudinal studied assessment. These additions is what we've added because as we were giving out the results, parents and teachers are looking at us like, what do we do with this? What do we do at home? And so we have these suggestions, but we also have our curriculum. And that's a whole nother conversation, but we have 185 days with every single one of those pathways. So we have thousands of days of worth of curriculum, depending on, it's kind of like a buffet. And all of you educators know that your 4-year-olds this year is very different than your 4-year-olds next year. So you can't always use the exact same pathways that you're focusing on, because one year you have athletes and they're all amazing in gross motor. So you kind of push the gross motor aside. And one year you have fine motor, half your kids can't even cut till the end of the year. So our curriculum is more like a buffet based on your students and based on your results. So when you get a results like this and you realize, wow, 50% of my students are emerging in comprehension, that's where you can focus the curriculum on. And we have a lot more within our curriculum that would be a whole different conversation. I just wanted to give you a zoom out on what we do, and then open it up for any questions or any specific things that you want me to pull up to show you a model of.
That is great. Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate it very much. I want to be sure that the folks from National Center have an opportunity to give their presentation. And if you all are ready, let's hear from you. And then we'll do question and answers and discussions, because I think it's important to understand how all of these three fit together. It's not either or. Foundation's recommendation is, if it were me, I would do all of them.
Okay, sure thing. I just want to be sure that my screen share is behaving itself. Okay, cool.
It is.
Everyone sees the right
Okay.
thing. Sometimes Zoom likes to surprise me with what window it decides to share with everyone. So hello, I'm Katie Brown. I'm the Director of Research and Professional Learning at the National Center for Montessori in the Public Sector, and I'm joined by Katie Grabowski, who is our Director of Tools and Assets. And yes, it is a requirement that you be named Katie to work at NCMPS. It has been so cool hearing about these tools that measure child development and child outcomes. And the DERS is the flip side of the coin. So the Developmental Environment Rating Scale measures classroom level inputs in terms of supporting children's ability to develop executive functions, language skills, and social emotional skills. So we developed this tool to provide a lens for folks who do not have a Montessori background or Montessori training to see and understand what's happening in a Montessori classroom. One point of clarification is that the word Montessori does not actually appear in the DERS tool anywhere. It's a tool that was inspired by this need that we saw in the schools that we serve, to again give a tool, a way of understanding, a way for untrained administrators, coaches, anyone, researchers like myself, I do not have Montessori training, to come into a classroom and understand how the classroom is functioning. But it's actually applicable for any developmentally oriented classroom. So it is an electronic tool. Historically, it has been an iPad-based app, but just a few months ago, we released the web-based version of it. So you no longer need to have an iPad to access the DERS. You can use it from any web-connected device. Although I wouldn't really recommend a mobile phone; it's a little bit small, but a laptop or any other tablet is great. So of course, you know that everyone on this call understands that Montessori is based on the Montessori triad, right? So a lot of the classroom observation tools that are out there really think about learning in that sort of conventional school way, looking at this two-way interaction between children and adults. And in Montessori, we think about learning differently. We think about it as this three-way interaction between the child and the adult and the environment. So the DERS is designed to make visible and observable the way that learning happens within this paradigm in Montessori classrooms and in other developmentally oriented classrooms. So to develop the DERS, we started with a review of the literature to get an understanding of what are the child level outcomes that the research tells us are actually important for children's development as sort of high functioning, happy, healthy human beings. And we landed on three things. So the first three are executive functions. So these are these are the five domains of the DERS. So the tool yields a score in each of these five areas in terms of how effectively the learning environment is supporting these five outcomes. So the first three, initiation and concentration, inhibitory control, and working memory, we encountered these concepts earlier when Josh and Cindy were presenting. These are aspects of executive function. And then that fourth domain is focused on language development. And when we say linguistic and cultural fluency, we're really taking a sociocultural approach to literacy, thinking about how children are using language in their social interactions and relationships. And then that social fluency and emotional flexibility piece pertaining specifically to self-regulation and the ability to manage one's own emotions. So when we think about what these outcomes actually look like in the primary classroom, right? We think about those executive function skills, and Josh and Cindy told us so beautifully about them. This is children's ability to concentrate, their ability to manage their impulses, their ability to leverage their working memory and hold information in mind while they're working with it. Again, when we talk about language development, it's really about a culturally situated understanding of language, how children are able to use language in social interactions. And again, that piece about understanding social cues and recovering from disappointments. These are kind of like what these outcomes look like in early childhood. And so what we did is we went to the literature and we mapped backwards. We said, what does the research tell us about how learning environments support the development of these skills for children? And we came up with a set of 60 items. There are 20 child behaviors, 20 adult behaviors, and 20 aspects of the physical learning environment. And these 60 items make up the DERS. So these are the 60 things that observers are looking for evidence of when they conduct a DERS observation. You'll notice that all of these things are things that Montessori educators are already trained to do and be attentive to, or to not do in the case of calling across the room, right? But these items are not on this list because Maria Montessori said so 100 years ago. They're on this list because we actually have evidence that these attributes of the learning environment are helpful for children in developing these outcomes. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Grabowski to give us a tour of the actual DERS interface.
All right. Okay, so here I am in my web browser, which, as Katie Brown mentioned, is a very exciting new addition to the DERS. We have for a very long time been only able to do a DERS observation on an iPad. And now we are able to do a DERS observation oops, shoot, sorry. I just clicked the wrong button. There we go. I lost my I lost my screen for a second. And so now we're able to do a DERS observation on any web connected device. We know that lots of schools have Chromebooks. Many people are observing already with laptops, and we want to be able to allow people to utilize the tools that they already have in their buildings. Before I start showing you the DERS platform, I just want to mention that DERS training is an online asynchronous training. So anybody who wants to use the DERS is able to take a roughly 6-hour asynchronous training. So you can do this on your own time. You can watch it in bits and pieces. It allows you to see a DERS trainer scoring a classroom by video, and then gives you the opportunity to practice and to get personalized feedback from a DERS trainer. And then at the end, you take, for lack of a better term, a test to see how well you are able to score in comparison to our expert scores. And then DERS trained users are able to access the tool for a year, and then you can renew your subscription after that year. So when you come to the DERS platform to start an observation, we have a very clean interface that allows you to either view old reports or start a new observation. Classrooms are preloaded, so you're selecting from the list of classrooms that you already have loaded for your organization. We're going to go ahead and just pick a practice classroom. DERS is currently in the platform at the early childhood 3 to 6-year-old level, and the elementary level, which is roughly first grade through 6th grade. And we have, very excitingly, an adolescent version of the tool that is very close to being loaded in. We are wrapping up kind of final bits and pieces. That piece has been on hold as we transitioned to the web-based tool. But there are some consistencies between the items that you're going to see in early childhood, elementary, and adolescent. And then there are some things that are slightly different, because we know that children at different levels, developmental levels, are really honing different skills. So you may see, more planning and orienting to one's work in the elementary level, whereas at the primary level, we're really looking for children to be able to complete, one cycle of activity, instead of thinking forward to, what am I going to do this afternoon, or what are the 5 things that I need to finish by the end of the week to complete this project that I'm working on. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the early childhood DERS. And when you enter, you're going to see this screen. We have child items, adult items, and environment items. As Katie said before, there are 60 items in the DERS. That breaks down to 20 items for each of the 3 areas. So we're kind of looking equally at the child, adult, and environment, and how these things come together to support a classroom that has really strong developmental foundations. And so you are able to choose, kind of toggle between child, adult, and environment. So we're not sorting through 60 items at a time. It also kind of helps us to frame our observations. Am I looking at what children are doing? Am I looking at what adults are doing? Or am I looking at some kind of physical aspect of the environment? We will start with an environment item, because these are the items that we generally tend to tell observers to begin with when they're starting a DERS observation in a classroom, because these are much more static. They're things that we're going to be able to observe very easily while we're taking in the other interactions in the room. So I'm going to click on language rich written. Our item is here across the top, and in this top box, you're going to find very specific indicators. These are the things that we're looking for to help us frame our scoring, which is listed below. So in this case, we're looking for a classroom that has a cozy reading area, somewhere that is welcoming to the children, a selection of texts that are representative of the classroom community. And we're also looking for high interest print materials. So not just those leveled readers or Bob books, but also beautiful picture books for children to enjoy, things to spark ideas and conversation. And then based on whether or not you saw these 2 things, you are then able to select a score. Either you didn't see either of these indicators, you saw at least one, or you saw both. And once you've clicked that, then you're able to go ahead and select another item. We can go into the adults section. I'm going to check on warmth and connection. So this is an item where we're looking for what are adults doing? Are they sharing in the children's enthusiasm? Do they connect with children by making eye contact, smiling? Is conversation limited to only academic topics, or are adults open to having conversations about maybe what they did last night or had for dinner? In this case, instead of saying I saw 1, 2, or 3 of these indicators, we are looking on the range. Did we not observe this at all? Were adults always exhibiting this behavior? Maybe it was sometimes, but not always. Maybe it was rarely that we saw it. And again, we would then select our score based on that. Our child items, most of them are the same. In the case of conversation, are we seeing conversations that are initiated by children? Do we hear a lot of conversation happening between peers, between adults and children? Is it that the classroom is really quite quiet and conversation is not kind of a hallmark of this room? Maybe it appears in pockets, or maybe there's just this buzz of conversation that's happening throughout the classroom. So once you have gone through and in what we recommend 45 minutes to an hour and scored all of the items in the DERS, you're going to end up with a report. The beauty of the report is that when you are done with your 60-minute DERS observation, you are done with your DERS observation. If you want to go in and make some edits, you are welcome to do that, but you don't have to. Each of the 5 domains receives a score based on the scores that you selected while observing. You can see that there are some bands here that show that classrooms that score in these areas are either low functioning, developing, high functioning, or optimal in that particular domain. Each domain has a summary, a narrative summary that kind of explains what was seen and how it relates to what was going on in the classroom. If the observer took any notes beneath the scoring options, there was a box for notes. If any notes were taken, then you would see them here. And then let's keep going down. You see kind of the same structure for each of our 5 domains. We have a table here that are our rated attributes. You can see that they are broken down by score and then also broken down by child behaviors, adult behaviors, and environment attributes. And so this allows you to kind of at a glance be able to see what the score was that a classroom received on each of these items. We have a spider graph here that gives us a kind of snapshot, what we're looking for in the DERS, because it's so interconnected, and because because children are generally practicing these executive functions, their social emotional development and their deep literacy development kind of simultaneously. We want to see a nice neat pentagon. If we're seeing something that has kind of a squashed side, that gives us a little bit more of an indication that we need to look a little bit more deeply at how our classroom is supporting that particular domain. And then we have some space here to have coaching conversations. So you can add notes to these boxes where together with a classroom teacher or a classroom teaching team, we can look at areas of strength, areas in need of growth. We can set some goals and we can discuss kind of supports that would be needed to attain those goals. And so these are the DERS reports are a very kind of quick way to see how a classroom is doing when it comes to those 5 domains and whether or not this classroom is really supporting deeply those areas of development that we know are so important for children. And that's all I have for you.
Hey, that's great. Thank you so much. So I imagine people have questions, right, Lindsay?
I would think so. Yes. And Katie, sorry, I was on mute. I was struggling to unmute myself, but thank you so much, Katie. That was really useful tool, something I wish I had used in my public school setting as a principal, because I can see how helpful that would be. All of these tools and assessments give such valuable information. And folks at home or in your office, wherever you are, if you have a question, we'd love you to come off mute. We have just a few minutes remaining in our time together. Or if you're in a place where you can't talk right now, please go ahead and type your question in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Katie G, one of the things that came to me as I was listening to your presentation too, if I was in the process of accreditation, I could see how this might be very helpful to me as a school administrator as well. This would really help me kind of get a picture of where my strengths and maybe challenges were on the campus so that I could provide support to those environments that might be struggling or might be struggling in just one particular area. And then cross-referencing to see how we could help those environments grow and help our children and adults flourish. Do any of our presenters have any final words of wisdom you'd like to share? And for all of our presenters, if you'd like to put your name and contact information in the chat, that might be very useful to our attendees as well.
I just hit enter too quick. Sorry about that, guys. I'll get all that information in one message and send that. I think it's important to note for our Montessori educators that we do offer a discount when you are using the DERS and the MEFS in conjunction. And so that's an awesome deal. You're looking at different things using the different assessments, so it's really that full circle piece that makes everything work together. So if you would like further information, I'll put our information in the chat. We're happy to send information via email, or if you want to do a Google Meet, see a live demo, or have a demo option where you can actually get into our system and use it yourself. We're happy to coordinate that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Josh.
Yes, same with us. I'm going to just add the Montessori special. We do have a Montessori special where all of our Montessori schools are able to test twice a year. So what's really beneficial about this assessment is if you do it at the beginning of the year, from an administrative perspective, you can really support your teachers because you can see that year specifically where her class or his class is at developmentally in the different pathways. And then at the end of the year to kind of track that growth and also to see if they're ready for kindergarten. So I will also I will put the Montessori special flyer on the website right now.
Fantastic, Nikki. And one thing I know as a school administrator myself, it was really important to have this data when we were having conversation with parents as well. That it wasn't, just my feeling or my opinion about a child's progress and how we are supporting them, but we could actually refer to a non-biased report and share the information with parents. It really helped in sometimes difficult conversations. And so often parents appreciated having that information and knowing how they could help their child.
Yeah, we're often referred to as the bad guy. We kind of come in and the administrators are like, kind of like, see, or the teacher's like, we told you, but now it's tangible evidence. And also something that Tim has really been able to help us bridge is the gap to help identify students with special needs that are coming into your school. Because if you have a student coming in mid-year or whenever, it's hard to identify where they're at. And so with this assessment, you're able to really see where the big gaps are and to see if the school can accommodate some of those special needs because not everyone has the resources.
That's right, Nikki. And for us, I have been in both private and public schools, we found that when we had an assessment result, oftentimes parents could take that to their pediatrician. And while we're not diagnosticians, we could take that report. And many times parents would say, I've been concerned about my child for such a long time, and my pediatrician just kept saying, oh, they're fine, they'll be fine, they'll catch up. But when I took the report and I could show my pediatrician, they're functioning in the third percentile, the pediatrician could say, oh gosh, well, I guess, yeah, maybe I need to make a referral for some more assessment and possibly an OT or PT or a speech referral. So it can be a very useful tool on so many levels. I don't see any other questions in the chat at this time. I do see Dr. Amber is here with us. Thank you for being here, Dr. Amber. And she added that these are great tools. So, if Dr. Amber is saying that these are great tools, you can believe they are.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Pollock. I'm so glad that I made the point to be in this because we needed something just like that. So I've been
Thank
taking my notes. Very, very
I think that is
good.
so important. Thanks, Dr. Amber. I mean, the bottom line is that each of these tools has a different function and they work really well together. And they give us a way of looking deeply at what's happening. For example, as school leaders, the DERS is invaluable at looking at what's happening in our classrooms.
Yes.
The Chancy and Bruce is a unique tool, as is MEFS, in terms of looking at really young children. I don't know anything better than that. And they can be used with older children, especially MEFS, I think, can be used with your spouse, right?
Yeah,
Josh, you
yeah.
look at adults.
So our child platform that all the Montessori schools are using is child oriented, but the assessment itself works on any age. I think there's a lot of implications for adults to be using it in a professional manner, but also looking at cognitive decline, concerns for maybe early onset Alzheimer's, things of that nature. So its use is very wide.
I
Wow.
just want to remind, sorry, Lindsay.
No, that's okay.
Finish your thought.
I was just going to say how helpful that is, especially we're seeing Montessori expanding into the care of seniors, especially seniors with onset of dementia. I can see how valuable um, the MEFs would be in that as well. Thank you, Josh, for pointing that out.
Yeah, yeah, and just understanding as an adult, as an educator, even if you're an administrator, how you interact with others that you work with, understanding what executive function is, where yours is at, and when it's not working so well.
Good point. I see we have Megan who has her hand up. Megan, do you have a question or comment?
I do. So as far as the DERS goes, over my career, I've seen quite a bit of pushback and concern from guides in the room from having like a coach come in to help them or, to improve their environment or whatever it might look like. How is DERS presented to the guides and the staff in a school so that they feel comfortable with it and don't feel like this is going to be a judgment on their capabilities, their classroom, and things like that, just to kind of make sure that they're comfortable?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have a training called our DERS orientation. The idea behind the DERS orientation is that it allows people to understand the research behind the DERS. Why have we chosen these 5 things to measure? And then what is the DERS doing? Like when somebody comes into your room and is clicking away on a keyboard or tapping away on an iPad, what are they looking for? And so, the idea we say very specifically in DERS training that it is not a teacher evaluation tool. In fact, when we say adult, we're talking about all of the adults in the room. So you are observing any adults that are in the room, even if they're, maybe like a school social worker who's coming in to lead a little group of children in something, or if there is, a team teaching dynamic or an assistant and teacher dynamic. We're looking to see that all of the adults in the room that are working with children are displaying these particular behaviors. And so partly it is, getting across that we are just looking at the classroom environment and how it's supporting children's development. And part of it is that there are three pieces to the DERS, that we're not just looking at the adults, that we're looking at how children are interacting with one another, what kinds of things they're doing on their own, and how the classroom is set up. I think that added piece of the coaching at the end of the report is really designed so that this isn't just something that is handed to a teacher and they're told, this is where you score and this is your number, but rather to create that conversation around the information that is there. We don't want DERS to just be something that is checked off of a list, but rather a place to start conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. And hello.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
So again, we really recommend that everyone take a deep look at this. For all three organizations, if you have any PDFs that you're willing to send out, if you can get them to Lindsay or me, ideally in the next hour, we'll send it out to everyone that's registered. I think there are 350, 400 people that are signed up for these weekly broadcasts. We're happy to share with everyone. I'll also be happy to send it out in one of our e-newsletters to the general membership of our organization. So again, we really thank you for coming. For those of you that are listening, I know how busy you are this time of the year. I appreciate that you made time to come. If you want to have any of these folks back again, I mean, most of them have been with us at least once, and we're happy to have them again and go in deeper into whatever is interesting to you. So
Thank
thanks,
you
everyone. I
again
guess that's it for this week, right? What's coming up next week,
Yes,
Lizzie?
thank you for asking, Tim. Next week, we have two rock stars. We have Maria Ava Chafin and Christine Lowry, who will be presenting on the topic of how can schools meet the needs of children with learning differences and special needs. So we hope to see you all back again next week. And again, thank you to all of our presenters today. This was invaluable information. We really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for making time to be with us. We really appreciate National Center, Chancy and Bruce, and Reflection Sciences for making all of you available. Thank you so much. Glad to have you again. We'll do this again and go into greater depth.
And to
See
all
you
the
next week.
to all the presenters, if you guys ever want to collaborate, you guys have my email. Would love to work with any of you guys. Do amazing work out there. So let me know if you guys want to continue this conversation further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Bye.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everyone.
Thank you.